Good morning, everyone. How are you today? My name is Stephanie. Welcome to Get Ready With Me and Talk About Stuff, the show where I just talk about whatever is on my mind as I put on my makeup. This is not a tutorial. I'm basically doing my makeup while I talk to you just so I have something to do. If you like my videos and you haven't yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and please share the videos. Let's get more people coming to the party, shall we? It's always more fun when we have more people, and hopefully after today you guys will comment on the topic because I have some questions for you when it's all done. Now, what I want to talk to you about today was, it first started as a question in my mind, and I have no idea why the question was on my mind, but that's where it started. I was curious as to why my parents would not allow me to watch Jem and the Holograms when I was a kid. Jem and the Holograms came out in 1985, so I would have been 11 years old. Just the right age for Jem and the Holograms, but I was not allowed to watch it. And at first I thought this is probably because maybe Jem was too feminist for their liking. I grew up in an evangelical household, so feminism was like considered a great and terrible evil. It was nothing to be encouraged. Or I thought maybe in some weird way they were reluctant to allow me to watch it because of some, satanic panic type stuff. Wow, I used way too much primer today. Anyway, I thought maybe it had something to do with that. I wasn't sure. I asked my parents why. I asked my mom. My dad was pretty checked out most of the time when I was a kid. I don't know. He was just working a lot, I guess. But anyway, so I asked my mom, I'm like, why were we not allowed to watch Jem and the Holograms? Because I remember very specifically we were not allowed to watch that show. And she didn't remember why. And I thought, well, that's just weird. So I started doing some research on Jem and if there was any controversy surrounding Jem, and I couldn't find anything. What I did find, however, is a reason I did not expect, and it makes perfect sense. And that reason is, back in the 80s, and maybe still now, I don't know, but back in the 80s, it was a common thing to make cartoons specifically for the purpose of selling toys. I once upon a time entertained the notion that people who made cartoons because they just loved children and wanted children to have cool stuff to watch after school and on Saturday mornings that would just make them feel happy and so good and everything was awesome. And well, as it turns out, I was blissfully naive about so many things, and it was just really precious that I thought that, because that was not the case, at least not with so many of the cartoons that were famous back in the 1980s. So what we're going to talk about today is a more fun topic than what I usually do. I usually dive into some pretty serious stuff. Today is just for fun. It's just for funsies. And we're going to talk about some 1980s cartoons that were made specifically for the purpose of selling toys. So first up, we have Thundercats. Thundercats, the toy line, or the concept rather, was actually created in 1983, and it had toys that went with it. I think the original plan was to release the toys and the cartoon at the same time, but different things happened, and that was not the case. So the cartoon did not actually premiere until 1985, which means that the toys predated the cartoon, thus making Thundercats a cartoon that was made primarily to sell the action figures that were already on the market. If you're not familiar with Thundercats, allow me to read to you just a brief summary. So the show follows the adventures of humanoid alien cats who were forced to evacuate their home planet because bad people, or bad aliens, bad other humanoids, I don't know, were going to absolutely destroy it. So the Thundercats had to leave, and they eventually settled on a planet known as Third Earth, and Lion-O and the other Thundercats were, you know, they fought to protect the planet from the invasion of, like, evil mutants, I guess. I don't know. The toys were produced until 1987. Apparently, from what I have read, they're still available in various places. Probably rather pricey, but yes, so the toys were produced until 1987. I always hated that show, to be perfectly honest with you. I never liked Thundercats. I remember watching it after school, like watching the last few minutes of it every day, not because I cared about Thundercats at all, but because right after Thundercats was a show that I really liked at the time, Little House on the Prairie. So I would come home after school, you know, get a snack, do whatever, and then I remember I would always go up to my parents' room because both of my parents were working and we had a babysitter, yada, yada, yada. This must have been before Latchkey was a thing, because I remember going to Latchkey as well, but I would go up to my parents' room, and on their little black and white TV, I would watch the last few minutes of Thundercats, and then I would watch Little House on the Prairie. So that is all the familiarity I personally have with Thundercats, and honestly, that's all the familiarity I personally want to have with Thundercats. They have never ever appealed to me, although I know some people really love them. My Little Pony. This one I'm a little more familiar with, not so much the show, but the toy. So the toy was first introduced by Hasbro in 1981 as My Pretty Pony. Now the original concept of the pony, it didn't really catch on. It was not until the ponies were rebranded and revamped in 1982 that people really started to gravitate toward them. Hasbro made the ponies more colorful. They gave them more of those, you know, weird tattoo things on their butts. You know what I'm talking about? They all have like stars or hearts or whatever on their hindquarters. And Hasbro made those more colorful. And, you know, that was when My Little Pony really took off. It was already a popular toy, but then in 1986 there was a movie, because who doesn't want a My Little Pony movie is my question. And then the toys just became immensely popular. And to this day, they still enjoy a lot of popularity. There are My Little Pony cons, I guess you could say, like pony, I don't know. I don't know what they're called, but there are like conventions for people who love My Little Pony. And I watched an interesting documentary a few years ago called Bronies, and that is about guys who like My Little Pony, and they are avid collectors. And it was really, really interesting. If you've not watched it, and you like My Little Pony, or you just like interesting documentaries, I strongly recommend it. It's actually quite beautiful. I really enjoyed watching that, so maybe you will too. I don't know. So next up, we have He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This was another one that I hated. I have to say, generally speaking, I did not enjoy cartoons that much as a kid. But the shows that I enjoyed were shows like, obviously Little House on the Prairie, as I mentioned. But when I was much younger, I enjoyed shows like The Great Space Coaster, The Electric Company. I mean, our Lord and Savior Rita Moreno with her, "Hey, you guys!" I mean, that's awesome. Like, that was cool stuff, right? And then, so by the time the 1980s cartoons came along, I was just, I don't know. Cartoons used to frustrate me. I would watch the backgrounds of the cartoons instead of the main action, and it really irritated me that so often the backgrounds were just repeated scenery. I noticed this especially with the Flintstones, and I just really had a hard time with cartoons. But He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was one that I really did not dig. I didn't understand why people liked it. I did not think, I just didn't like it. But the story goes, so Mattel began manufacturing the He-Man toys in 1981, and and was it the toys and the show? I think the toys and the show kind of happened at the same time, but obviously the show was intended to assure better sales of the toys. So Mattel began manufacturing those in 1982, and the show revolved around He-Man and his nemesis, the villain Skeletor, on the planet of Eternia. And it is considered by many to be like the quintessential 1980s cartoon. I mean, I think that, you know, just about anybody that you ask for an example of a 1980s cartoon, He-Man just immediately comes to mind. As I said, I never enjoyed him. Now, I didn't even enjoy She-Ra. I love the reboot on Netflix. The She-Ra reboot, I adored it. Adora. I just cracked myself up. But, and I actually watched it with my son, and he loved it too. And, you know, but the original one, I remember as a kid, and this was true with He-Man too, I didn't understand why all of these characters who were supposed to be young were made to look so old. I didn't understand that. She-Ra did not look like someone that I could relate to whatsoever. She looked like an older, I mean, keeping in mind I was a kid at the time, she looked like an old woman to me at the time. I've watched some of the She-Ra cartoons with my son. We look for them on Netflix, or not Netflix, on YouTube, and just watch clips, and they amuse me endlessly because I still don't see what the appeal was of these cartoons back then, but, you know, obviously, people really, really loved them. And, you know, that's all good. If you liked it, that's what matters, right? So, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was yet another cartoon made to sell toys. The Transformers. As you may have guessed, another one that I didn't like. But, you know, a lot of other people really, really loved it. So I'm just going to defer to you fine folks on that. So it was originally inspired by Japan's Diaclone and Microman toy lines. These were two separate toy lines, and Hasbro bought the distribution rights for North America and introduced them to the North American public as the Transformers. And this was in 1984. The cartoon also premiered in 1984 with a movie in 1986. And the movie was actually like a segue between two seasons, which I guess people really liked. I don't know, because again, the Transformers was not my thing. But the cartoon depicts a war between two factions of transforming robots, the Autobots and the Decepticons. And the Autobots are the good guys, the Decepticons are the bad guys. The Autobots are led by their fearless leader, Optimus Prime, who, if I remember correctly from the Netflix series The Toys That Made Us, he actually gets killed within like the first few minutes of the movie, which is like, okay, whatever. And Megatron is the leader of the Decepticons. The Transformers are still very popular. There have been some live action movies made, although from what I'm reading, the Transformers, you know, the modern movies were not well received by hardcore Transformers fans. As you may have already guessed, I did not see the movies, although now I'm somewhat tempted to watch them because I think I remember enough about the little bits of the Transformers I did see back then that I would be able to at least enjoy the movies for how bad they are. Do you ever watch movies because they're so bad they're good? I do that. That's kind of like one of my things that I enjoy the most when I'm looking for a movie. Like if I'm really stuck and I don't know what I want to watch, I will look for movies that I have heard are just absolutely awful. and I'll watch them just to see for myself how awful they actually are. Moving right along. Barbie. Now, Barbie premiered in the toy premiered in 1959. And Barbie has actually been very popular as a toy since she was introduced to the public. She's never really had a time when she wasn't well loved by a lot of little girls and boys. However, one of the criticisms of Barbie has long been that she's just too, for lack of a better word, plastic. She doesn't have a lot of substance to her. She doesn't have a lot of depth. Her whole entire life is shopping and boys and hanging out with friends. And Mattel has worked hard over the years to try to revamp Barbie's image. And I think there has been some measure of success with that through the videos that, the straight-to-video movies that she makes, or that Mattel makes, rather. But the first Barbie movie came out in 1987, and it was a Barbie and the Rockers movie. Now, Mattel will say to this day that Barbie and the Rockers was not ever conceived as a way to compete with Jem and the Holograms. That they were always going to make a rock and roll Barbie, and that it had nothing to do with the fact that Jem and the Holograms and the dolls that went along with the show were, presenting a problem for Mattel because they were so popular. But the premise of the movie Barbie and the Rockers is really profound. It is really it encourages girls to believe that they can do anything that they want to do. It is the stuff of feminist legends. In this movie, Barbie and the Rockers goes to outer space and they become rock superstars. Any girl can do that. Any boy can do that. It is important that children of any and all genders have a role model to look up to. And, a character that goes to outer space and becomes a rock star with all of her friends, I don't see what's so unrealistic about that. Okay, so since the movie in 1987, Mattel has made, dozens, literally dozens of straight-to-video Barbie movies. And there are, of course, always toys to go with the movies. I remember when my 17-year-old niece was little, she had a bear called Shiver. And this bear and now my 7-year-old niece plays with it. But this bear made weird sounds and had glowing cheeks and eyelashes, rather, that would be the envy of anyone who enjoys a strong eyelash. And of course, this was a toy that was made to coincide with a Barbie movie. So yes, the movies they're delightful, they're enjoyable. They are absolutely 100% made to sell toys, even though that was not really necessary for Barbie because she was already popular. I think that the point of the straight-to-video movies is to try to revamp her image, to give her more substance than what she is traditionally known for. And I guess that's a, understandably noble effort, I suppose. I guess. I don't know. If you have children, do you let your children play with Barbies? I played with Barbies till I was like 14. I loved playing with Barbie. Because I liked the idea of making my own little world. And when I was a kid, we didn't have much money. And even when I started babysitting and stuff and earning my own money, I definitely did not want to spend it on Barbie things. So what I did, I remember I had a few Barbie things, and I took this old suitcase, one of those old cardboard suitcases, remember those? And I made like a little Barbie house in it, just out of stuff I had laying around. And I loved it because when I would play when my sister and I would play, I have a sister who's about 4 years younger than me, so... it was like I could just get immersed in this little miniature world I'd created. And it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. And I played Barbies till I was well into my teens. And I'm not ashamed of that. No shame whatsoever in my game. So now we come to where it all began, where this quest for understanding had its humble beginnings. We get to discuss Jem and the Holograms. Jem and the Holograms started in 1985, and it was a show that, as with so many shows back then, it was made primarily to sell dolls, or toys, rather. Jem is, the show was known for its music. Every episode featured music that was written for the show specifically. They weren't borrowing music from others and trying to make it sound unique for the show. These were original songs that were written specifically for the show. So the thing about the show, the music in the show, the songs sung by Jem and the Holograms, who are the stars of the show, they were they had horns, they had piano, they had a much they didn't rely heavily on synthesizer music. Then the Misfits, who were the arch rivals of Jem and the Holograms, their music was, very heavily synthesized, a lot of, raw guitar sounds. So it was really interesting as I watch these episodes now. And yes, I do watch them now. Thank you very much. I watch them with my little niece, and sometimes by myself. It's interesting the way they use the music to enhance the characters. And I think that is one of the many reasons why the show became so wildly successful. Because with the Jem dolls, which the show, as you may recall, was designed to help sell, you could get a cassette of original music by Jem and the Holograms, or the people playing as Jem and the Holograms. What other things that made the show unique were the fact that it didn't shy away from talking about difficult subjects. And the show creators, the show writers, really made an effort not to talk down and sound cartoony to the people who were watching it. I do this a lot, don't I? They really wanted to communicate with their viewers as if their viewers were intelligent enough to understand what the show was talking about, and it didn't have to be spelled out for them like they were perpetually 4 years old. That was different. I remember enough about 80s cartoons that I remember a lot of being talked down to, as if I couldn't understand what was being said unless it was broken down to the most simple of terms. It was also a show that was very diverse. Of the four main characters in the show, two of them were women of color. One was black and one was Asian. And these women were Jem's sisters. They were her adopted sisters, but they were her sisters. And that was never made into like a thing. Like, these are just my adopted sisters. No, these were her sisters. And back in the day, for kids who are watching this, it was important for them because they saw a character who looked kind of like them and represented a lot of their experiences and wasn't made into just a side note or a footnote in the show. So the show focuses on Jerrica Benton, who, upon the death of her parents, she inherits Starlight Music, and she also inherits an invention of her father's named Synergy, who is brought to life by earrings that Jem wears. And what Synergy can do, well, one of the many things she can do, is she can project a hologram onto Jem and her sisters that make them look like these amazing rock stars. And what this does is it gives Jerrica the ability to present herself really as just a completely different person, and indulge in a music career that is it changes people's lives, really. And as Jerica, she is responsible for the Starlight House, which is a house for like runaway teenage girls. And in that role, she serves as a mentor, as a mother figure, and then as Gem, she serves as like a you know, a relatable star, a relatable hero to these girls. Along with Gem and the Holograms, we have the Misfits, who are like Gem and the Holograms, like they're rivals. And the Misfits are, they're misfits. There's no way to say that nicely. They are misfits. And the show does a great job of pitting the two bands against each other, and has a lot of fun with plots about how, you know, the Misfits are trying to take down Gem and the Holograms, and how Gem and the Holograms respond to the various threats. And it really is a good show. I really enjoy watching it. However, while the show was popular, Hasbro ended up dropping the doll. They stopped producing it, so they stopped producing the show. Why is that? Well, most likely, there are a few theories about this, but most likely it is because the Gem doll was considerably larger than a Barbie doll. What that meant was a few things. If someone bought a Gem doll, they had to buy all new accessories, all new clothes, all new everything for their doll, because she could not share clothing with Barbie. Whereas with Barbie figures, if you bought a Barbie doll, or any of Barbie's friends, except, you know, Skipper and the smaller dolls, they could all share stuff. This also meant that stores that carried the Gem, both Gem and Barbie, were going to have to completely reconfigure their toy aisle, because their toy aisles in the big box stores are configured to accommodate the Barbie doll, and dolls that are in direct competition with Barbie, that are the same size and so forth. So retailers did not want to have to, you know, reconfigure their whole setup to accommodate a doll. So I think, you know, from as far as I can tell, Gem, the doll, the biggest downfall was that they just made her too big. And I don't understand the reasoning behind doing that, because it makes sense. It makes more sense to me that having her the same size as Barbie would have been more direct competition. But hey, I'm not a toy maker. What do I know? All right, I am going to pause and finish this up. And I hope you'll stick with me, because there's more I want to say about Gem and the Holograms. I watched that god-awful 2015 movie, and we're going to talk about that when I get back. So hang with me. I'll be back shortly, like in the blink of an eye for you. Hang on. Showtime Synergy. I'm back. So, like, I've had this stuff, this wig, and my earrings sitting around for a while, because I've been thinking about making this video, and I was so excited to do it, I couldn't wait anymore. So, last night, though, I watched that awful movie, Gem and the Holograms, the one that was made in 2015. I'd read that the movie was poorly received by lifelong Gem fans, by people who grew up with the show, you know, are still fans of the show, people who felt the show was especially significant to their lives. And I thought, well, I guess I better find out for myself. So last night I watched the movie. To say the movie was a disservice to Gem and the Holograms is a vast understatement. The movie is similar to the TV show in name only. There is a character named Gem, and she does have, this wig is wild, isn't it? And she does have a backup band, which eventually is called the Holograms, and her band is comprised of her sisters. But that's about as far as the similarities go. It was so disappointing. I can't even tell you. And I watched it on Netflix. I did not pay anything extra to see this movie. I cannot imagine how people who actually paid for a ticket to go see it in a theater must have felt, because going to the movies is not a cheap venture. It's like, it's a whole thing. So I can't even imagine how that must have felt for people who paid for a ticket, probably paid for concessions, probably really looked forward to this movie and made a whole event out of going to see it. In the movie, Jem is not a grown woman who has her own life and her own achievements and is able to handle all the responsibilities of managing the Starlight House and, you know, trying to gain control of Starlight Music and being a rock star and, you know, having to make these difficult decisions. In the movie, she's a teenage girl who happens to get wildly popular on the internet and then is signed to Starlight Music, which is owned by a completely different person, Erica Raymond. I get that, but what happens later in the movie? So, in the show, Jerrica Benton is the rightful heir apparent, I guess, of Starlight Music. In the movie, that the executive of Starlight Music, Erica Raymond, she has the power to give it to her son, and that just that made me so mad. I'm like, in every way, they took Jem, who was this dynamic, powerful character, two characters really, and made her into this insecure, disempowered, you know, someone who was created by a record company, not somebody who was, you know, a star in her own right with her own abilities and her own visions for what she could be as Jem. It was just so disappointing. And Synergy, who is herself a powerful character in the TV show, she was made into a cutesy little robot that really didn't do anything significant other than, it was kind of, you know, Synergy in the movie was kind of a MacGuffin, because you're kind of waiting for Synergy to embody in the movie what she does in the show. And as the movie goes on, it becomes very apparent that Synergy is never going to be in the movie what she was in the show. But yet you're strung along waiting for Synergy to become Synergy, and it never happens. So the movie was just horribly, horribly disappointing, even to somebody who's new to Jem like I am. I was like, what is this garbage? Within like 5 minutes of starting the movie, I was already angry about what they were doing to the character. And by the end of the movie, I was like, man, I just wasted 2 hours of my life on this crap just so I could say I saw it for myself. But it is what it is. But 80s cartoons are fun. Nostalgia is fun, but I think what sets Jem and the Holograms apart from the others is its unwillingness to assume that its viewers are too dumb to understand what's going on. So they don't break everything down to the viewers like everyone is perpetually a preschooler. They assume the intelligence of the viewer, and they invite the viewer into a story. Even the side characters have complicated, you know, backstories. You know, these are fully fleshed out characters that just kind of take on a life of their own. And it's an ensemble. You know, the holograms need each other, and the misfits, and vice versa. And it's just, you know, it's a really good show. And I think it's it is still being enjoyed. There are comic books out now, and in the comic books there are openly gay characters, and the discussion is that there will continue to be more LGBTQ characters as the stories develop. But, you know, it's just a part of, you know, 80s nostalgia that gets lumped in with everything else. But in my mind, bearing in mind that I hated most 80s cartoons, I think it kind of is set apart. I think that Jem is very different from the other things that were out there. And I wish that you could see. See, now you can see the whole wig. This wig is wild, you guys. I could not find an official Jem wig, so I had to go with, like, I think it's like 80s rock star wig or something. Pink 80s rock star wig. Something along those lines. And this is what I ended up with. It does the job though. And then these Synergy earrings. They're kind of awesome. Unfortunately, they don't project a hologram onto me. They're all for show. I don't have a Synergy. I just have pretty earrings. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was a nice trip down memory lane for you. My question is, if you are a child of the 80s, what were your favorite cartoons? Did you enjoy the cartoons that I mentioned? Did you have others that you liked? There's like one piece of hair right in my face. There we go. Do you watch them with your children today? Because I have so much fun watching old cartoons with my nieces and nephews and my son. So do you do that with the kids in your life? And let me think here. Oh, have there been any reboots of 80s cartoons that you've seen that you liked better than the original? Or maybe you thought it was worse than the original? And finally, what 80s cartoons would you like to see rebooted that haven't been rebooted yet? Gem has, everybody involved with the project back in the 80s would love to see it rebooted. What I've read, though, is that the licensing for Gem is very complicated, and that's why it hasn't been done yet. So anyway, I want to know your thoughts. Was this a fun video for you? What were your favorite cartoons? Do you watch them with your children? Which reboots would you like to see? And which reboots did you see and wish you hadn't? Let's put it that way. And by your children, I mean the children in your life. I understand that everybody has kids, and can't say I think that's a problem. I think that parenthood drives me to do things like put on bright pink wigs and do my makeup in strange ways just so I can remember who I am. I don't know what that was all about. Anyway, so I hope you're having a great day so far. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll keep watching. I've got some interesting topics coming up. Some of them are really fun. I know I talk about a lot of serious stuff on this channel. I'm trying to throw more fun topics into the mix, because there is still a lot to enjoy in this crazy mixed up world we're living in. There's still a lot of fun to be had, so I'm kind of wanting to put my attention there for a while. Anyway, have a great day. Please share this video, and if you enjoy it, if you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe and tune in. The topics coming up are going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you'll come back and join me as we discuss them. All right, I will see you all later. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other. You don't shut on yourself or anyone else, and I will see you again very soon. Bye. Show's over, Synergy.